Hello, good afternoon and welcome from Manchester. It's Sunday, October the 5th and the first day of the Conservative Party conference. Anne and I are here in the middle of the exhibition hall next to the splendid Politico pub. You can hear all the banging in the background. The formal start is in about 10 minutes' time. A gathering which will see Kemi Badenoch do two speeches to steady her leadership, the first of which is this afternoon. Hasn't she heard of the consequences of inflation? My name is Sam Coates of Sky News.
And I'm Anne McElvoy from Politico. And Kemi Badenoch has just told an interviewer, if something's not working, stop it. Well, that could well be the theme of this conference. Welcome to a special bonus Sunday edition of Politics at Sam and Anne's. We've got everything you need to know about what's happening here at the Conservative Party gathering in Manchester, plus some scoops you won't hear anywhere else, and one is coming up in just a moment. Now, for this party this week, the stakes are high. The Tory leader arrives with a huge amount to prove just to hang on to her job, and contenders for her crown are queuing up to give their speeches with one eye on what the rest of us are thinking.
This is, as we promised, a Tory party conference special edition, but it's inescapable. And obviously we're here in Manchester, a city still grieving after the terror attack on a synagogue on Thursday. 2 Jewish people were killed and 3 left in a serious condition after a car rammed into a synagogue and there was a stabbing outside. One of the victims apparently killed by police gunfire. The suspect was shot dead at the scene and he's been named as 35-year-old Jihad al-Shami, a British citizen of Syrian descent. He was shot dead by police. Nearly 500 people who took part in protests yesterday were arrested.
The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has been out and about on the airwaves saying police forces will be granted powers to put stricter conditions on repeat protests. She says it's not about ban, it's about tightening restrictions and conditions, and that would give the police more powers to control how these demos unfold in practice. It's a response to criticism the government has been too slow to stop these demos spiralling into something that is more like disruption and is felt by some communities to be intimidating.
Now, to my ear, that change from Shabana Mahmood in this heated environment sounds complicated in order to actually turn it into sensible practical law. So let's see how that shakes down and how the police respond. And so bearing all of that in mind, we're going to come back to this issue tomorrow, not least, I think, Anne, because you're talking to senior Tories through the day for a bit more of a reflection and reaction to the events of last week. So we'll sort of do that properly, I promise, on the pod tomorrow morning, along with all the other news, including the repercussions of the collapse of the Chinese spy trial, jaw-dropping stuff there. Some dispute about it from the Cabinet Office, as well as all the other fare for our morning Monday episode. But right now we're going to stick to giving you exactly what we promised.
Which is a special episode on the opening of Tory Party conference. If you're listening to us in Manchester, do come and say hello in person. Sam and I will be around in the conference centre and we're doing Politics at Sam and Anne's, a live session in the main exhibition hall at the Politico pub at 5 p.m. today. So do drop in for that. Tomorrow we both appear at the pub again. We're quite hard to get out of the pub actually, with Patrick English from YouGov, because we have exclusive Tory members polling and you won't want to miss it.
Now, I'm going to say the quiet bit out loud right at the top of this podcast. I am confident, Anne, that I can say that there is an active operation to get Kemi Badenoch this week, or rather get Kemi Badenoch out this week. It's conscious, it's deliberate, so we'll be tracking that all the way through this conference. And in a funny way, I don't know what you think, Anne, but this week is a bit of an echo of last week. Like Labour, the Tories are grappling with reform, and the big question is how much to attack them and how much to echo them. So let's find out the answer to that this week.
Yes, Sam, she arrives with the long anticipated announcement that she wants to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. Now, that's a commitment she did not want to make in her leadership bid under a year ago. She's also said that she will repeal the Climate Change Act. So we have 2 big moves that echo reform or attempt to align with its policies and yet put some sort of conservative stamp on them that's distinctive. I think the ECHR one has been a very painful segue for Badenoch. Personally, she resisted a long campaign on the right to make this move. Now she says, well, I've prepared this ground much more carefully through senior legal opinion. But it's pretty obvious that she feels she has to move towards reform or her own leadership is on the line. She presented it to Shadow Cabinet at the end of last week. Privately, we've heard Shadow Cabinet figures saying this was pretty much a fait accompli. There wasn't a chance to discuss it. So now it is absolutely identified with Kemi Badenoch, and it will stand or fall on whether she's able to make that argument.
Oh, that's really interesting. Not much meaningful discussion. We've had paler imitations of you since, Anne, but I still think that the interview that you brought us on Thursday morning, and we talked on the podcast then, set the tone for these next few days. And that was when Kemi said to you that she thought that the Tories were a distressed asset. Now, the more and more I've thought about this, the more just goddamn weird it is as a metaphor. Distressed assets are quite often unsalvageable, and then they're sold to new owners for next to nothing. So particularly when, to use another Kemi analogy, shareholders don't necessarily trust, well, the quarterly returns aren't great, the longer term strategy will deliver. I actually think it was bonkers to say that to you, but like, good get. And whatever you do, don't tell Nigel that the Tories are a distressed asset. So I'm slightly obsessed by her insistent use of such a terrible metaphor.
Anyone with any metaphor at the top of politics who wants to be interviewed by me, I am open to it. I'm no critic of anybody's metaphors. I think what it did show, though, Sam, was that she knows that she is in a position in the polls and the internal arguments in the party, which I think you're going to break us something scoopy in just a moment, that the only argument she can really make is that chopping and changing leadership at this point signals division. And it's not her fault that the business, so to speak, of the Conservative Party was in the cellar when she took it over. One thing that was very noticeable to me in my interview with her at the end of last week was she didn't really want to talk about the roles of anyone like Robert Jenrick, particularly Robert Jenrick, who's out there every single minute, as far as I see on social media, building up his profile in a way that looks like it is a leadership challenge in waiting. But she said everybody is on one page, everybody agrees with everything. But as we also heard reflected, there's not a lot of conversation, I think, going on around that table where people are able to sort of put forward different ideas. I don't think this is, I want to say one word in fairness to Kemi Badenoch, I don't think her mood is my way or the highway. I think she knows she has a very narrow line to walk, which is to say, if you ditch me, what makes you think that putting in someone else is going to improve your position vis-a-vis reform? Think about that before you do it. I think that's the underlying emotional tenor. Let's see how it goes through the week here.
We will. I mean, look, party conference is a complex beast. It's the job of the party to get notice, make news and rally the troops. And I've got this feeling that this week's going to feel really long. I'm not giving away any states because I'm not going to make it to the end of the week. You'll find out more a bit on that in the next day or two. But it stretches on till Wednesday, and here we are on Sunday afternoon. But there aren't a huge number of events for people to cling hold of, so there's going to be like dead periods. You've got the backdrop, which is YouGov having the Tories on 16%. We think that the number of MPs, if there was an election tomorrow, would drop from 119 to 45. Some people will be asking why they deserve this amount of attention. Kemi is speaking this afternoon, early afternoon, and then again on Wednesday, Mel Stryden Business Day tomorrow. But, you know, that I worry for the sort of roller coaster of the mood of conference, given that a lot of the rest of the time it just does feel like a bit of a dead zone.
No comment. Top Tories talking of three key moments coming up, which will define the broader picture, I guess, for Kemi Badenoch and for supporters of hers like Mel Stryden, we're going to be talking to over the next 2 days, when it's going to be riveting, Sam, is that there are these big moments coming, whether they like it or not. The big one out there, also must be said for Keir Starmer, is May elections, when both leaders, I think, have to prove that they have got the mojo to take their parties forward. But for Kemi Badenoch, that does look very challenging. But before then, we have the budget. That's another danger point. Is she really able to grip the economic and business message? It's what she wants to talk about at this conference, but does it really pan out like that for the reasons that you set out? It's quite a long road, noises off, things can easily knock that off track. Here's another, the first anniversary of her becoming leader, which I'm sure everybody has in their diaries, and that's November the 2nd this year. Now, that's the first moment MPs can submit letters to the 1922 chairman, Bob Blackman. It takes more than bit used to dislodge a leader. Rules were changed last year. So you need a third of the MPs rather than 15%. So it's a third of 119, so 40. Just under 40, but let's count 39 point something to be 40 of a Tory MP. So another moment of peril beckons, and this week I think will shape the road to that. But before we get to the risk factor, Sam, I know you've got a couple of scoopy insights for us. The first one is about the numbers, the actual volumes of people here. You know, we can hear people coming in, but how's it really doing, as opposed to, as we heard one optimistic lady clearly from managing this conference saying, oh, it looks like it's going okay, is it?
I'm sorry I couldn't quite wait for this podcast before getting this out last night, but it's a little exclusive just for you, Anne. I get a lot of leaked data, and what this is a leak to the Tory party board from August the 11th, and it's an early cut of the numbers, but also the targets for the Tories at this conference. And what it shows is that in the members category, their target for this year is 3,200 members. Now that's down on last year when it was 3,800 who'd already signed up by early August. So in early August, when my leak is from, they were already 1,000 applications down where they were the previous year. So you can see that there is this drain of people that are coming. One source told me that the numbers of members actually coming to this conference even now is on the 2,800 mark on a like-for-like basis. Party sources say the data is old and that the number of members coming is 3,500, but they're wrapping together a couple of different categories, so that's not a like-for-like comparison. Look, the bottom line is the target is less, and we're just in this hall which feels emptier. The ground of this exhibition hall is less covered than it was a year ago. And I was talking to somebody who booked a hotel room in the last few days for conference. You haven't been able to do that normally, and they were able to find a room at the fancy Malmaison Hotel for 200 quid a night. And they thought that was evidence of just far fewer volumes of people coming.
It's definitely going to feel like a thinner gathering. It's interesting that you point out there that the targets were moved. It's as if the anticipation was already there that this was not going to be the glad, confident gathering that Kemi Badenoch would have hoped for. So they moved the targets. Good trick, that one. In one way, though, it's interesting to me, Sam, that the big business, big media corporations sent top teams here at all. And you could say, is that a legacy attachment to the Conservative Party, or at least an interest in how it's going to fare? Better keep in there with the Conservatives. You never know. Two-party politics, as it was a sort of pendulum affair. Well, now we have this new world where we're just as likely to be talking about reform on Sam and Anne and in all of our reporting and on the insurgent parties on the left as the Conservatives move rightwards to try to catch reform. And I don't think Mel Stride, I'm going to be talking to you about the economic prospectus a bit later as we get going in the conference. I don't think he would mind me saying that he's reflected in conversation with me and others that he has a bit of a thesis that if things are so volatile, well, maybe there is room for a Tory recovery. Maybe this is not the final state of play so far out from the election. And that is credible, but you come down to the question of who should lead it. And against that background, I think it's Scoop Mark 2 from Sam Coates coming up on the podcast.
Thank you. Yes. So we've got an exclusive revelation of another defection, and especially for this podcast. I can reveal that one of Kemi Badenoch's earliest donors to her leadership campaign, a PR guru called Mark Gallagher, has defected to Reform UK. Mark Gallagher works for Pagefield. He's been around the scene for absolutely ages. He gave £2,000 to Kemi's leadership campaign on the 16th of October 2024. I can reveal at that time he was an advisor to Kemi Badenoch. She got him to give her personal advice. I am told that he has become extremely disenchanted with the Conservative Party, and he has now defected about 2 months ago to reform, and that is the party he's now going to support and I suspect give some advice to. A Reform UK source told me Nigel and Mark have been friends for a very long time, and we understand he is very disenchanted with the Conservative Party. The Tories tell me that while Gallagher was an early supporter and advisor, and they confirmed that Kemi Badenoch sought advice from him, they said he always flitted between parties and was never really true blue, but are unable to deny that, he was still providing advice to her after she became leader, and I think that's quite painful. It matters, Anne, not only because we've got a donor switching sides, but also because I think he was in the room. He was in the room there.
And how is this all going down on Planet Tory?
Well, I asked the Tories, because one of the things that's put to me was that one of the frustrations of Gallagher, in line with quite a lot of people, it has to be said, was that he would message her or try and get in contact with her, and there'd be nothing, quite unlike the way that Nigel Farage deals with donors. So I asked Kemi High Command what they made of that criticism, and they said, now I'm going to read you what the aide said, and it's quite something. The aide said, she gets 20 texts every minute from MPs, friends, ex-MPs, supporters, peers, people offering advice and so on. She endeavours to get back to everyone. But realistically, she's running the world's oldest political party, doing media interviews, having meetings, doing visits, and being a wife and a mother of 3 young children. So it would be churlish to get quite so upset about timely responses. Wow, that was sent to me 10 minutes before this conference officially started. That does, first of all, calling the donor churlish doesn't feel great, but that looks like a very stressed out team. And what did you make of that?
Well, I make of that you touched a bit of a nerve with that story, and you can do that, Sam. I'd say that working with you day in, day out. But no, speaking though on more substantially, I think that does show a certain reactiveness. I think they feel that they need to defend Kemi Badenoch, the aide responding to you. I have to say, I'm always rather for aides responding than that thing of going quiet. So, I'm giving a bit of credit there. I think that sense that she is under immense pressure, and to sort of say how can you fault her. It is true that a party leader gets endless sort of texts and WhatsApps. I think the sense there is how well is this being managed. If it's coming down to the fact, did Kemi Badenoch not reply, well, you would say that it's not that the team shouldn't come down to that, right? They need to protect the principal, and the principal also needs to be able to say, look, I have incoming, this really matters, how are we going to deal with this? Or she simply took a decision she didn't want to, which is possible. We don't know that from what you were told, but what we did get from it is that immense reactiveness. It wasn't, donors come, donors go, which you could say. Kemi Badenoch has tried very hard to get donors back on board. What I think is even more important that is lost there is that strategic advice, which she's clearly been lacking, and I think she's had to make up a lot on the go. She's had a very thin bench of strategy advisors. Probably that's missing even more than the money.
Now, to be absolutely clear, that was a statement given to me, for publication, which is why I read it out in full, which is interesting, and credit to them. But Anne, I want to ask about one bit. What did you think about the fact that the aide said and invoked her being a wife and a mother of 3 young children?
Well, I suppose as a part-time wife and mother of 3 children, you'd expect me to have some degree of empathy there. I think what they're trying to say there is that she's very, she is a person with a private life. She has a family life. She's a rounded person to that degree. And it's sometimes said, Kemi Badenoch, she doesn't come across as a rounded person. But I think if you ask me to use that on a story that is one of, it's a story that's going to flare up, and you have to roll that out. That seems to me that's something that you can say, maybe further down the line, if she's dealing with an accumulation of problems. To roll it out maybe at this point, I would perhaps have advised differently, shall I put it that tentatively. Personally, I think it is really hard. I do know if you look at it, anyone who's a parent, and I think women take a bit more of the brunt, you get them to show you sometimes what's coming into their WhatsApps, and the fact that they've got, someone's just been sent home from school with knits at the same time as, the bit of their party is falling apart or their policy is falling off the cliff. I understand what he's saying. It's just to have to roll it out at this point feels a bit too much.
As a father of 2 children and a husband, I'm going to say that what is too much is more than 20 minutes of us. And so we ought to wrap it up. Thank you very much for joining us for what is now an alive and bustling exhibition centre at the heart of the convention centre in Manchester, next to the Politico pub. Come and see us. Come and tell Anne why she's brilliant. Come and tell me why I'm wrong. And we will be back tomorrow for Politics at Sam and Anne's.
And don't forget the order of that. We'll see you around the pub.